Friday. Oh my God, Jeff, what is that on your head?
Uh,
Sorry. Okay, so everybody, welcome to the 30-minute rendition of Culture Club in which two of the hosts talk for 30 minutes, as I just said. But I'm sorry, I'm confuzzled because Jeff is wearing a Bush Cheney hat.
I know. It's
Please
great, isn't
explain,
it?
please.
Look at this
What,
old school
what the
like
hell are you
serif and the.
doing?
This is fully embroidered, by the way, and made in the USA. Listen,
Okay.
it's just it really. I'm wearing it in jest, and I'm going to take it off in a second. But I was, as I do, I'm at a thrift or something, and found this hat, pulled it out, and it got me thinking. Like, and I do consider myself a Democrat.
Yeah.
You know, we had a time in our
but,
history.
but Trump's got some points. Is that
No,
where
no,
we're
no,
going
no.
here? We're
Please,
getting
please.
Florida billed.
No, no, hold on. Oh my God, Florida pill's a whole nother thing. We need more registered Democrats in Florida, by the way. That's a
Yes,
whole
we
nother
do.
story. Anyway, it got me thinking. Do you were there during that time? I remember this time during Bush Cheney, and
Hmm.
do you remember how aghast we were about the Bush Cheney relationships? If you look
Yeah,
at
for sure.
Cheney himself, and Dick Cheney is just a mastermind around war. And do you remember when it was this bad? Right, that's my point. Like,
Hmm.
we thought this was bad,
Oh yeah,
and looking back now, holy shit, how wrong we
yeah.
were. Like,
Paragons of organization
and
and
the only
and
reason I'm wearing this hat,
morality.
and the only reason I'm wearing the Bush Cheney hat, is because Dick Cheney is now a friend of the Democrats, dude.
Right.
So
The whole
Ben,
thing is
is it okay
bizarre.
for me to wear this hat?
Well, I don't know. It's funny. I mean, my immediate thought. I don't know. We've probably talked about this in our conversations about New England. But when I was a very small kid, between the ages of play 4 and 11, would go to my aunt Ethel my aunt Ethel's house in Kennebunkport for a couple of weeks every summer, down the road from the Bushes.
Right,
And
right.
there's the marina in town is called Chicks Marina. And so the last time I was in Kennebunkport, I got a Chicks Marina hat. So immediately I was like, oh, well, if you're going to wear a Bush hat, I've got to wear a Chicks Marina hat. And we can, status flex our proximity. Jeff, I don't know. I mean, as long as you're wearing it as a symbolic and ironic gesture, then okay, fine. All
I'm
right, now
swapping
we're
it out.
switching. He switched
Well,
over
it leads me to
to the
that point.
reserve.
Back to reserve, back to paddle as always. But it's interesting, there was of course that clip of President Joe Biden. I believe he was at a memorial around 9/11, a room full of red Republicans, and you can recall as a joke he put that hat on, and how much fodder came from it. How much fodder came from the fact that that Biden put that on. And by the way, like, you got to give Biden credit for having a
Wait,
little
wait.
bit of.
Sorry, I don't think I missed this. So what
Oh,
hat
you
did
didn't
Biden
see
put on?
this.
No, I didn't see
So
that.
I believe it was either the day of or the day after the 9/11
Memorial,
memorial.
which would have been 2 days after the debate because the debate was on the 10th.
That's right. And for those that are not aware, um, Joe Biden, former President Trump, and others actually worked together, and of course, in solidarity around 9/11. And Biden went to an event, I think, at a firehouse thereafter, and he got into this kind of fun back and forth with a Republican sitting there, and the guy didn't stand up, and he told, I think he said to Bush something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing, like, "Hey, you got out of bed today," and it was kind of like a little bit of a dig, and Biden got him back. And
Mm-hmm.
then Biden was signing official presidential hats, and the guy handed him a Trump hat, a MAGA hat rather, and said, "Hey, would you sign this?" And instead of signing it, I think he put it on his head, and as a joke. And the media, funny enough, most media understood it as a joke, right? So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
didn't
for
get
sure.
Fox News like pulling all this bullshit that now
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Biden
Mm-hmm.
loves Trump, But what was cooler was, it was really a sign of, a lot of people just saw it as a sign of, I don't want to say unity, but come on, let's be honest about it. Like, what's wrong with a
Right.
fast joke of the Biden wearing, this? So anyway, the point is, it's really interesting how much, we really don't think about it, but the MAGA hat is so iconic
Oh yeah.
in a moment in history, and still is.
Well,
And go ahead.
I mean, this is. I mean, on the one hand, the problem with it, right? It's like Trump is incredibly good at iconography. He's incredibly good at visual branding, and uh, he instinctively good at it, which is I think the thing that is probably most notable. And You know who else has been really good at iconic branding? Just
Who?
fascists, generally speaking.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They've got it. They're real good at it, and that's the worry about it, right? For me, anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't need. We don't want to make this a political thing, but it's like, the power of the symbols is huge, right? And it's very much
Exactly.
aligned with what we talk about all the time on this, in this
Exactly.
in this
He's
instance.
certainly done a great job of getting a base riled up, even though he's doing some really wild things. And
Well,
go ahead.
I think I no, I was just gonna say I think the thing that is interesting about Biden putting on a MAGA hat, which I didn't hear anything about at all, didn't hit my news cycle at all, is that there is a wink and a nod there. The
Yes,
problem, my problem with Trump basically is that nothing he does has a wink and a nod.
that's
At
right.
least not in the way it's received by his true believers. It's
Right.
all like, taken with the utmost seriousness, even though most of it, as we've seen with all of this stuff in Springfield, Ohio, is just like is simply not true. Never
Yeah.
mind like batshit conspiratorial, racist, whatever, just not true. So
Also, the fact, and again, we're not going to play politics. This is not our field, but the fact that JD Vance, I believe this week, had a full-on admission that regardless of the fabrication of the story, it's okay for him to do that in order to power his base, which I thought
well, right. I
was
mean, he said, "This is what my
outrageous.
constituents are talking about, so I have to address it." It's like,
Right.
okay, well, those are you don't have to listen to those particular constituents if you know that they're saying something that's not true.
Right. And we can go back, and I always throw back, the one I think just absolutely most incredible and almost unprecedented video of Senator John McCain, who passed away some years ago, a man who spent, I think he spent almost a decade in um, a POW camp in Vietnam, if I'm
It
not
was not yeah, I
mistaken.
don't know the number either, but it was not a short amount
It
of
was
time.
not short, comes out of that. And, I think you've probably seen this video when he was running stump during his election run, and a woman in the crowd, um, started saying, I don't want to say derogatory, but she was saying, very untrue things about Barack Obama at that time, and how quickly John McCain just kind of said, "Well, wait a second, wait a second. I know this guy. He's a great guy, and I'm sorry. Like that's just not true." Or if you look at the Mitt Romney head to head with Barack Obama, and just how friendly it was, shaking
Mm-hmm.
hands. How's your family? And
Well,
man,
it's
we're
respectful,
just in
yeah.
we're just in a shitty place today, man.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
That's right. Well, yes, and we're in a shitty place for a number of different reasons, which we're just not gonna harp on. But it does. There is a parallel in untruth, simulacra. I don't know what, like general falsehood with a little detective story I want to tell you about this week
yeah, let's get into it,
that
Ben.
doesn't have an answer, but I found fascinating. So, uh, Affidavit, which is the publication of Cultural Council, which is a little, or I shouldn't say little, they're actually not little at all, but is a PR communications agency based in New York, run by a guy named Adam Abdullah, who's a friend, and for a long time, one of my uh, former colleagues and another friend, Marcella Zimmerman, worked there. She now has her own offshoot of it called Digital Council. Anyway, Cultural Council, they published this newsletter called Affidavit. And in this week, they asked a bunch of collectors about the first piece of artwork that they fell in love with and collected. And I just reading the piece, I was like, oh yeah, I wonder what I would identify as that piece for me. And the thing that comes to mind is a drawing by Steve Powers that I bought. So Espo Powers, who's been on the show before, but who Steve Espo Powers, who does these kind of meditative doodle compositions where like he'll create a little visual glyph for an
That's right.
expression, like running late, for instance, so that you get the word late and it's got legs off the bottom, which interestingly got ripped off by a cafe in Manila last week that I
Oh, it
just read
did.
about
Hold on, let me pull that up.
in Hyperallergic. But anyway, I mean, Steve, because he works in pretty simple graphic memes, artistic but graphic visuals, it is pretty easy to knock off, and I think he probably gets ripped off a lot. Anyway, I was thinking about this drawing, and I was trying to find a link to McKegwell's, the gallery that I bought it at in this group show in 2004. Couldn't find it, and I was thinking about other art that turned me on to the idea of like collecting and accumulating art, and something
Yeah.
that I hadn't thought of in a long time was something that was a project that Jeff McFettridge did in about 2001 called Fang Frame. And it was a series of prints, 11 by 17 prints, in an edition of 300. And they came with this cardboard self folding frame that had a little plastic screen on it. And so you bought the kit and you could swap the four prints in and out of the frame. And I was like, all right, let me see if I can find that so I can have this little story in my newsletter.
Right.
Went to look for it, found a version of it that had sold on eBay a few years ago on WorthPoint, which does a good job of illustrating what the concept is. So
Ben,
that's
what is WorthPoint, by the way?
it was new to me, and I guess what it is a way to validate what your items for sale in resale marketplaces are worth,
Like an
right?
estimator.
Yeah. So I have not signed up, but if I signed up to WorthPoint, I would be able to find out how much the Fang Frame kit sold for the last time it sold, and then I would be able to set my price according to that. I'm not selling it because I gave it to a friend a long time ago, which I regret, to be honest, but I did.
What a nice
And
guy.
yeah, I am such a nice guy. Mayumi, if you want to give it back, you just let me know. But the thing that was and this is where the detective story sort of takes a turn. I was looking for images of it, and one of the things that I found was a Jeff McFettridge print on Amazon for $21. Now, Jeff is a fine artist of standing and repute and
Absolutely.
value.
Yep.
And so I was like, it doesn't make sense that one of his pieces would be on Amazon as a $21 print, like under any circumstances, much less one from a company called Udini,
Yeah.
Oudini. And I went in, and this Udini company is like, it's birthday greetings, and it's like trading
I
card nonsense,
I
and
see
then
Golden
it's
Girls birthday party supplies. If you want a Golden Girls theme.
exactly. And then if you scroll down, you get Jeff McFettridge art prints available
Crazy.
in 5 different sizes. Clearly, just total bootleg nonsense, IP theft.
Right.
And it just brought to mind like how much artists must have to deal with that stuff, and how, I
Super
mean,
struggle.
essentially, you got to keep a copyright lawyer between that and the Steve Powers thing, like a copyright lawyer on staff scouring the internet for knockoffs, and
Yeah.
it would be an endless pursuit. So I really, like, I feel for those guys, and I just think it's I can't believe that Amazon doesn't have a reverse image search mechanism to identify copyright
Sure.
materials. It's just
Listen,
anyway.
I think the kids call it dupes today. I still prefer to call it a fake because even a bootleg is like even a bootleg's kind of cool. Like it's just a fraud. It's a full on
It's
fake,
just theft. Yeah.
and it's not just that. I mean, I'm looking at a Memento Mori poster around Dostoicism as an example, and yeah, and it's funny because this is a massive problem. And what Amazon will tell you is that by the way, I'm looking at the McFedorus knockoff, and I can see that it's not even shipped from Amazon. So you do have to really check, under that price tag is where is it shipping
Right.
from? And
Right.
Amazon will say that they will be willing to take this down if a copyright holder would come and do that. I know they had major issues with fake Levi's, fake Nikes for
Huh.
quite some time years ago. And eventually, what they did was build a real relationship with Levi's. They had a relationship with Nike that went away,
Mm.
and it's a problem. And at the end of the day, like, listen, I love Amazon. Just like everyone else, I'm addicted to 2-day shipping. I'm sure it's just like you. Technically, it's 1 day usually, but there's a lot. There's a lot of product on here, and this is unfortunately one example of some bullshit. And there's a ton. And you know, not just artwork is, if you look at product more than ever, you can find what's known as what the kids call a dupe. The
Yeah.
unfortunate thing, Ben, is that the dupe culture of this generation, in some ways, they're okay with it because they actually especially with maybe clothing or products, they'll actually, they'll laud the fact that they have a dupe. They'll let you know that it's not a real thing. But artwork is tricky. I mean, sorry, artwork's not tricky. Artwork is it's pretty black and white, I think,
I
unless
mean,
unless we're seeing some,
yeah,
what's
well,
the old term? Art bar
that was the
steel.
thing that beg bar. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is the thing. That work in the work in particular that is on Udini, and we should put a link to it in this show notes so people know what we're referring to. But that's a painting that I've seen. That painting was released in a show at V1 Gallery in Copenhagen
Right.
or
Shout out
something
V1,
like
by the way.
that. Great gallery, great gallery.
Amazing
Um,
gallery.
something like that. And so, it just it dismays me that this is happening. Then again, the wildness of that Amazon marketplace kind of brings us to another story that we were going to talk about, which is of course that John Don, the
Sorry, you referring
CEO.
to him?
Oh, that's what they call him. That's what everybody calls him, John Don.
Oh shit, I'm way out of the loop then. I didn't
Yeah. Well,
know.
I mean, and I can't tell. I mean, I talk to a lot of ex Nike people, and to be clear about that, ex Nike people, they're all people
Ben,
who
by the
spent
way,
many
seven.
productive
It's
years.
like seven levels of Nike. What's the word? It's like there's always
It's the Nike diaspora.
totally, man. It's like
It,
four. It's no more than four circles before you get to somebody that that works in Nike
oh yeah,
or
yeah,
has worked at
of
Nike.
course, yeah, of course. But in any case, they all refer to him as John Don, and so they announced another subpar earnings yesterday. He announced that the board, and the wording of this was interesting. It said the board and John Donahue have decided that he will retire, and it was like, okay,
Sorry,
yes they did.
sorry.
But they one of a lot of the you know assessments of the problem and the recaps of this move that I've read have pointed to the fact that he led this removal of Nike from wholesale environments. And the thing that I find amazing is that the wholesale environments they talk about largely are Zappos, as opposed to let's call it a Foot Locker or a Finish Line or
An
something that's a
Amazon
little bit
company.
more right. And Zappos, which is an Amazon company, and while it is certainly a great place to go for shoes at great prices, it is a volume marketplace. It's
That's right.
got to be a low margin business. They can't be doing well. So to me, it's like the idea that you cite the one that is probably the least good for Nike's business as the reason that he got booted feels like a misalignment, right?
Yeah,
They got taken. The reason that they lost brand heat was because they got taken out of wholesale accounts that were driving presence and profile, and so empty shelf space. Hoka comes in,
absolutely.
on running comes in, et cetera, and fills up those spaces, and then suddenly there's no, the brand presence isn't there, and so people don't think to buy Nike
Right,
through any thing. So Elliot
right.
Hill, who was the until he retired 2 years ago, the president of the consumer market, is coming back in as the new president and CEO, and so
And
we'll see
listen,
what happens.
they need a shakeup, and
The
not
fun,
just because
well,
of
I
the
mean,
stock.
yeah, and the shakeup has been planned for a while. I had lunch this week with a former Nike employee who had seen her own name on a provisional org chart at Nike now,
No
even
way.
though she doesn't work there.
What?
Yeah. I mean,
It's quite
clearly, like,
strange.
there's a whole series of machinations happening where people are just like, oh, well, in order to get the company, in order to right the ship, we've got to bring this kind of person back. We've got to bring this generation of people back. And I was just like, boy,
Right.
that's presumptuous, but it's also, I mean, it shows the depth of the problem.
Right. I also want to make another point that may not be apparent to those that are just following the Nike story today, but if you look back to the the early to mid aughts, there were quite a number of retailers in New York City. And when I talk about retailers, I'm talking about boutiques. And if
Mm.
you remember, Ben, do you remember when Nike started to pull all of that back from places like A Life?
Hmm.
And I think I want to say Union. I'm sure Union had an account. Maybe they didn't, but the
Well,
point.
I was just going to say, I mean, Chris works very closely with them now. So, I mean, they might have been pulled back, but not out. Anyway, sorry, go
Right.
ahead.
But,
Keep
and by the
going.
way, shops like Clientele, if you remember Clientele, which I think
Oh,
now is,
yeah. I forgot about clientele.
which did not have, I don't believe they had an official comp. But long story short, Nike saw the wave of what was happening online with commerce. They had just launched Elizabeth Street, which I think is 255, if I'm not mistaken,
255. Yeah.
before they went to Mercer, and they were trying to pull all that back. So this is not the first time they did it. But to the point you made, if I go to the mall with my son and he is a big Jordan fan, he loves Jordans, he loves foam
Yeah.
posits. You know, we went, and we've got a Champs, we've got a Foot Locker, we've got a running store, and there was nothing for him. There was some
Interesting.
product, but it wasn't, it wasn't this, it wasn't the excitement that we got. And
Right.
you got to, do you say sorry to a Foot Locker when you pull back from them and now you're kind of jumping back in?
Yeah.
To me, it's interesting.
Yeah, fuck yeah, you say sorry.
You say sorry. I do want to
You
make one.
absolutely say sorry. And conveniently, you get to blame John Don. You'd be like, yeah,
Yeah.
that
Uh,
guy,
yeah.
came in from eBay or PayPal or wherever it was that he was from, and so yeah, you blame you right. Of course
I want to, I
you
want to make
blame
one
the
comment.
defenestrated chief, and you beg for forgiveness.
I have heard through various channels that when the announcement was made inside of Nike, and again, this is just, a rumor, that there was a collective yay
Oh,
through the organization.
I don't think that's a rumor. I mean, I haven't heard it, but I could have told you that.
Like a
I mean,
collective scream.
yeah, of course, of course. I mean, look, it's miserable to work for a beleaguered company, especially one that is great or has been great in your tenure there, right?
Right.
It was great in your tenure there, and it's not anymore.
Yeah.
I've certainly been there. It was you went there because it was great, and then it turned to crap, or it couldn't be made great again. I've been there too. It's miserable to be in those situations.
I'm
So
I'm
100%.
willing to put on the table, and I know others are in the industry, that when Nike is not doing well, and again, this is a very broad statement, that quote unquote culture is not doing well, right? So
Mhm.
if Nike is such a powerhouse in what's happening in street culture,
Mhm.
what you see on the streets, what you see on the basketball courts, that when they're not doing well, the whole market may not be doing well. I'd love your
That's it.
thoughts on that, Ben.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think that I I I if I were a little further inside the bubble, I could maybe countenance that. I don't know if I can at this level, but I
Hmm.
do think what I guess the I guess I would challenge that to say I think it's probably when a cultural giant like a cultural a giant voice in culture like Nike isn't communicating well, it has a much more direct knock-on effect than whether or not their business is doing well
Good
or
point,
not,
Ben.
right?
Good
Like,
point.
and it's
And
funny you should mention your son with Jordans. It's like I take a picture of the foyer in my house when my daughter has friends over, and let's say there are 8 people over, 7 pairs of those shoes will be Jordans. So
right.
I struggle with the idea that the macro business challenges are affecting the 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 perception on foot with these kids. But I do think that those none of those kids have ever seen the Winning Isn't Everything campaign. None of those kids
There you
interact
go.
with the brand in any kind of real way. They just know what their friends are wearing, and they get what their friends are wearing.
Right. And also, I have not looked at the latest earning reports. I'll probably dig into it later. But
Mm.
the one line item that was still doing well, of course, is the Jordan business. I
Mm-hmm.
believe before this past quarter, the Jordan business had grown, I want to say 18%. Don't quote me on that, but was still a growing business for them, which I find, which is interesting. But listen,
Well, it's amazing because the other thing that John Don got dinged for was a lack of innovation out of Nike, and
we haven't seen any,
the
Ben.
we haven't seen any from Nike. It's true, but Jordan. When was the last time Jordan innovated anything that mattered to their consumer?
But is Jordan an
Like,
innovation company? That's the thing.
yeah,
Like,
well, no, that's a fair point,
right.
and that's a fair point. Maybe and maybe
And they are
maybe that's
for
the
those that are not
distinction.
aware, they are two companies. They're two very, they're two solely different companies, or rather, they're
Well,
operating under the group, but I believe they're operated as a siloed company. But yeah,
yeah,
listen,
but the results still feed
they all
into
come together.
corporate.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. In, just to be really honest, I want to see Nike keep winning, you know, and the
Yeah, of
one
course.
advantage of them kind of depreciating a little bit in the market has been the fact that we've seen things like On Running, Hoka, and my goddess, Crocs really come in there and got their piece. So the question today is Nike fighting against Adi, Puma, Crocs? You know, that's the uphill battle they got,
Oh,
in my
all of them,
opinion.
all of them.
Yeah.
Not
Um,
and fuck it, Uggs. You know,
God, you can't.
UFOs. Yeah,
It's
I
crazy.
mean there are a zillion of them.
I want to say, Ben, I'm wearing them right now, and I can't take them off.
The
I can't
UFOs.
take them. Yeah, they're
Hmm.
amazing. Shout out Lufos.
Glad to hear that. Yeah, disclosure: I do some work with UFOs, the active recovery footwear brand, and so I got Jeff a pair that he apparently can't take off.
I
There you
can't.
go.
All right, we got a few minutes left, and we have so much this week. I want to get into another art story that
Okay.
I've just discovered myself, and I'm pulling it from the Smithsonian Magazine, and I'll quote the headline: "An 11-year-old boy rescued a mysterious artwork from the dump. It turned out to be a 500-year-old Renaissance print by
What?
Albert Dürer," which is interesting. These are my kind of stories. This kid, I
Yes,
mean,
they are.
this kid pulled a print out, and it's not clear when he found the print, but it is going to auction in the coming weeks. It's an estimate that the art block piece, excuse me, that the block print art. Did I say that right? Print art.
It would be a like a wood block print
There
probably.
we go. Sorry, Ben. The wood block print, which to me in the photo looks to be about 8.5 by 11.
Hmm.
$26,000 is what they're predicting it's going to fetch. That's not bad for an 11-year-old kid picking trash to the dump.
Yeah, no, suffice it to say, I mean, you know, these things, these stories just kind of beggar belief because this is not like a, you know, Cy Twombly drawing where
Yeah,
if you know, you know. Like this is a very impressive drawing. It looks like a heavy metal cover. I think it, you know,
it does look like a heavy metal cover.
there's the
That's
little
great.
homie Baphomet, you know,
Yep.
following up the night.
Don't
Anyway,
forget that spaniel.
oh, look at the spaniel running beneath the horse's legs. Look, the bottom line is this is a cool drawing. Like it makes sense an 11-year-old would be attracted to it, but also you know, I don't think anybody looks at this and goes, "Oh yeah, my kid could have done that." Like
Oh, for
it's
sure.
pretty impressive. So it's even more unlikely that that his you know languished in this place at the dump. I want to know more about the dump part of it. Like where was this? This is the dump
Well,
in
the
Park
kid
City,
is in
Utah. The dump in East Hampton, New York. Like
no, actually it's
you know
in
what I mean?
England. Looks like the
Oh,
kid's
okay.
from a city called Cranbrook, if I'm not mistaken. And the
Cranbrook.
Smithsonian story states that he's been into antiques since the age of 10. Not bad for a guy that's been
Not
collecting
bad. He's not bad for 1 year. Yeah,
1 year of
exactly.
collecting. But it gets me thinking a lot, Ben, like how much art or just general information from the past has just gone away. It's been thrown away, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
How
yeah,
much
yeah,
of
for
that has
sure.
just vanished?
Well, I mean, this is what drives you know collecting markets generally is scarcity, and some of that scarcity is manufactured, and some of that scarcity comes from you know just a lack of recognition that something could be valuable.
Right.
Um, yeah, no, it's interesting.
Uh,
It's really interesting.
it's a great story, and honestly, super cool for this kid to have an eye.
Well,
Um,
I mean, I'm now looking at the story. I mean, the kid, quote unquote, is now 24 years old, so he's going to go
so
take
it's
this
been some
26
time.
grand and like, well, he's gonna, you know, he's gonna buy a, you know,
Fiat.
A Ford Fiesta with it.
I think, by the way, isn't the Ford Fiesta the number one selling car? Am I wrong on that, or is it the Ford Escape?
I don't know.
I
They
never
might
get
have
my facts.
discontinued the Fiesta recently too.
Ay,
That might
ay.
just be in America. That might just be in America.
Ben,
Um.
let's jump from this kid's print over to Substack live stream.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I know you're a
I
big fan of it. I watched a Taylor Lorenz and the political reporter Ken K. Kittenbaum. Is that his name? Am I getting his name right?
Kippen. Yeah, I don't know.
Hold on.
I know who
Actually,
you're
he
talking about.
just sent an alert. Let me see if I got it in front of me.
Klippenberg. So
Anyway,
the
go ahead.
just to bring everybody up to speed very briefly, Substack launched this week a feature that allows Substackers to do live stream conversations which then can be published as effectively like video newsletters or as, saved and published as embeds within the newsletter, which is what I did. It alerts, with our experience with Clubhouse, it alerts your followers that you are
Cool.
going live. It invites them to tune in, and then it happens in a live moment, but like I said, it can be sort of captured and republished. So I did one on Wednesday with Austin Tedesco, who is the head of video and podcast, or podcasting and video, I think is the correct syntax, at Substack.
Oh, cool.
Lovely guy. But we had a good chat, and we had a chat about the product. It was actually his first time using the product in the wild, so it was fun in that regard as well. And it leaves something to be desired in terms of fidelity and in terms of quality as compared to like a Riverside that we record this on, but it also adds the live comment stream. You get a sense of who's watching, and so it has some real advantages there. And I think it would be an interesting thing for us to fuck around with a little bit for Culture Club.
I would love to.
Beyond that, though, and this is the reason that I put it up, because I've already talked about it. People who know my newsletter, have seen it. It dovetailed with a conversation I had with a guy named Benjamin Palmer, who you may know from Boston days, but Benjamin was one of the founders of the Barbarian Group, the
sure,
interactive agency, and
Man,
famous sort of digital
did.
trendsetters within advertising and marketing. And he's got a new product that he's taking to market called Teleport, which is, simply put, like Zoom on top of the internet, meaning you have a group chat interface that exists above the level of the viewing experience on the internet. So you can, with your little group, you can go to look at any website on the internet in real time and be talking and commenting about it.
That's cool.
And so we could do this podcast where we go through and literally show in the interface all of the websites that we're looking at and referring to while we talk about them, and anybody can drive. And it's a real, like, just it's an interesting utility, and you can imagine it being put to many different uses. But he said to us, he was like, what if we did an episode of Sick Talks or Culture Club using the software? And I said, let me talk to Jeff.
Well, listen, you know me, Ben. I'm always down to fuck around with some new some new software. That's cool. Listen, it's good that the collective conversation that we loved so much, excuse me, that we loved so much during COVID, we kind of lost that because we went outside, right? But I love this idea. I still very much love the idea of having a live audience interaction when we're having our conversation. It's quite frankly the thing that I miss the most about Clubhouse was, letting people come up and give their POV, because at the end of the day, like, this is just you and I POV, and it'd be great to get somebody else's in there in some sort of seamless way, which would be cool.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, Jeff, we have reached our appointed time. In fact, we've exceeded it by a little bit, but so we'll give the listeners the rest of their day to go follow these subjects, to go shut down the McFetrich bootleggers, to go investigate Steve Powers' new show in Tokyo, and also to of which there are some new Jeff McFetrich prints in there, or paintings in there too. Something
Very
where
cool.
he's now amalgamating a whole bunch of figures, and it looks like McFetriflage to me. So I've just coined the term McFetriflage.
Wow.
But yeah, and then go check out the Durer print story, fascinating, at Smithsonian, and check out the Kicks You Wear, which is the newsletter that we pulled our John Donne story from.
That's Mike Sykes, I believe.
Mike Sykes, who's a columnist for, if I'm not mistaken, the Washington Post, covers sneaker news and stuff, but is anyway, good source for like what the real sneaker fans think about stuff. So shout out to Mike.
All right, Ben, it's been another great half hour. Thanks everyone for listening. Again, do us a favor, follow the pod. I actually just got 2 people yesterday follow the pod that were not aware of it. It's pretty easy to find us, Culture Club Show. Don't forget the show part will be the first one that pops up. And that's it. Next week, Ben, let's talk a little bit more about Breakfast Club. I want to give a quick shout out to Breakfast Club Miami. And the amazing people we got coming there. And otherwise, dude, enjoy your weekend.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff. You too.
See ya.
Later.